On our 5th wedding anniversary, I spent the whole day cooking only to find my husband flirting with his assistant. "I know it's our anniversary," he said, "but the little girl is difficult, and she needs me to stay with her. Because making her happy by choosing her on the day I care about the most is what matters to him." But after I chose to let it go, my ex-husband begged me not to divorce him.
1.
I was woken up at a little past 1 a.m. by the sound of a car outside. I'm a light sleeper, and soon I could hear a man and a woman flirting. Still wearing my dress, I tiptoed outside. In the garden, I saw Yale and his young assistant entwined together. Yale was slightly tipsy, his neck encircled by the assistant's arms. His collar was partially open, and he was leaning against the car door as she planted kisses all over his neck. "Yale, can't you just go home with me tonight?" The assistant's voice was seductive, but Yale pushed her away.
He saw me.
Our eyes met, and I saw disdain and scrutiny in his. It seemed I shouldn't be here at this hour, that I was out of place. I helped Yale close a big deal today, and he was in a good mood, so we had dinner and came back a bit late. The assistant smirked, her voice sweet and provocative. What kind of deal required an assistant and late-night drinking? The answer was obvious. Yale didn't seem flustered by being caught, nor was he angered by her insolence. He lazily released the assistant and opened the car door to send her off. "Please make sure she gets home safely." The rideshare driver sped off in Yale's Porsche. Yale shrugged indifferently, his jacket draped over his arm, and approached me casually. "Still awake?" I was left behind, and the thin fabric of my dress made me feel cold in the night breeze. Tears welled up in my eyes.
Yale.
"Aren't you going to explain anything?" How could he just walk away as if nothing had happened? At least, he should be a little flustered, right? He stopped and looked at me with a hint of amusement. "Explain what? Didn't you see everything? Do you want me to admit that I'm cheating on you?"
2.
The scent of cigarettes, alcohol, and a woman's perfume danced in the air. Yale tossed his jacket onto the couch and rubbed his temples wearily, turning to go to the shower. I stood in the doorway, my words caught in my throat, unsure of how to begin. Yale had cheated, yet he acted as if nothing was wrong, not even bothering to acknowledge me. It felt like I was the one who had done something wrong, hesitant and confused. He noticed me and raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" Then his eyes softened. "You've gained weight. That dress doesn't look good on you." I looked down at myself. I was definitely out of shape compared to his young assistant. As you get older and more stressed, it's natural to put on weight. The collarbones that could once hold a goldfish were now starting to disappear. Yale had told me when I was wearing my wedding dress that no matter how much weight I gained, I would always look best in a dress. I believed in his sincerity, but I also had to admit that sincerity could change in an instant. This absurd conversation finally made me snap. "Do you know what day it is?" He glanced at me and scoffed, his voice unusually calm. "Yes, our 5th wedding anniversary. Actually, it was yesterday, since it's a new day now." He revealed my slip-up with a chuckle, as if it were an insignificant matter that could be easily dismissed. I had expected him to be confused or impatient, but I never imagined he would say it so casually. I could even accept him forgetting, but I couldn't face the fact that he could remember so clearly, even in a drunken state, that it was our 5th wedding anniversary. The 5th anniversary I had spent a whole day preparing for was dismissed with a simple sentence. My heart ached. It felt like ants were gnawing at me. Even if he could lie to me, it would be better than telling me the truth so bluntly. I clenched my fists, my fingers digging into the fabric of my dress. The nameless anger I had been suppressing burst forth. "Do you know why you came back so late?" After shouting that, I felt unsteady and had to lean against the wall to support myself. Yale seemed pleased with my reaction and sneered. She wanted me to stay with her. Young girls are difficult, and it makes her happy. 3. The man I'd known for almost a decade stood before me, but the cold indifference in his eyes made him a complete stranger. His detachment made me suppress my urge to scream and shout. I realized that making a scene would be pointless. It would only make me look foolish if he didn't care about me finding out about his affair. Why should he be the one to enjoy the spectacle of his own wrongdoing? I fought back the nausea and decided to go to the balcony to calm down.
He didn't stop me.
As he passed the dining room, he poured himself another drink, swirled the glass, and said mockingly, "That must have taken a long time to cook all this." I'd noticed problems in our marriage for a while. The intimate expressions of love between us had become distant. The last time, I think, was a year ago. He came home drunk that night and ended things quickly, saying, "I'm exhausted. I have a meeting tomorrow." He was always busy, working late 5 days a week, and we rarely had a proper meal together. I'd smelled perfume on Yale that wasn't mine, and I'd seen strands of hair that weren't mine. He said it was from a client he met in a private room. I believed him, because I had to. I was afraid to check his phone. As long as I didn't look, it was as if nothing had happened. I followed online advice and bought 2 sets of sexy lingerie. But when I tried to seduce Yale, he was completely resistant. "Amelia, you're not a little girl anymore. Why are you wearing this?" he said, almost laughing. "It doesn't suit you." Nothing was more hurtful than hearing my husband say that after my attempt at seduction. Shame flooded my chest. Yale didn't even look at me. He just turned over and went to sleep. I was no longer the woman who could arouse Yale's interest with a simple shirt. After realizing this, I tried many ways to win him back, but with little success. I had been looking forward to our 5th anniversary. I thought at least on our anniversary, there would be something new. I took a day off and cooked all his favorite dishes, but after several phone calls, all I got was a working late message. I sat on the couch, my mind racing with 2 questions. Should I continue to deceive myself and carry on, or should I just end this marriage? Now, I finally had my answer. Yale knew I would prepare for our anniversary and wait for him at home. But for the sake of his young assistant's happiness, he still didn't come back. Because it was difficult to appease a young girl, but I could be easily dismissed with a simple, working late. On the day I cared about the most, being chosen should have made me doubly happy. No wonder she could so arrogantly tell me that Yale was hers today. The moment my heart died, everything fell into place. I leaned closer and looked at Yale intently. "Don't forget, you were the one who begged me to marry you."
4.
9 years ago, after suffering setbacks in both my studies and love life, I found a job at a company, only to be deliberately made things difficult by a client. That's when I met Yale, who came to my rescue. He was very direct and told me he owed me a meal. We gradually became acquainted. He told me he was 2 years older than me and remembered me from the freshman orientation. "It's a pity you had a boyfriend back then," he said. "I wonder if it's too late to chase you now." Yale's pursuit was intense, a sincere yet measured enthusiasm. Within a year, he had helped me completely erase all traces of my ex-boyfriend from my heart and accept him. During that time, he was starting his own business and became increasingly busy. Inevitably, we had arguments. I saw a glimpse of my ex-boyfriend in him, the one who had abandoned me for his studies. After breaking up with him, Yale persisted in proposing to me for a month. "I will always be responsible for you," he promised. At 26, Yale was as pure as a 16-year-old boy. But times change, and so do people. When I said those words to him, he replied, "So what? I'm begging you to marry me, and if you don't agree, I'll come every day." Now, Yale raised an eyebrow, his mockery evident. "So what? That was a long time ago. Aren't we over now?" I knew this was true, but when he said it so calmly, my heart still trembled. If he could just give me some emotion, it wouldn't make me look so ridiculous. "Since we're over, why don't we get a divorce?" Yale was startled and sneered with pity. "I'm sparing your feelings, afraid you can't handle it. Someone who cheats casually and doesn't care about my feelings is telling me he's not divorcing me to spare my feelings?" I laughed. "Then let's get a divorce. I'm not one to cling on." I looked Yale straight in the eye. For a moment, he flinched. Then, he smiled playfully. "Playing hard to get? No, I really want a divorce. We can go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow." He stared at me intently, his eyes narrowed. When he was sure I wasn't joking, his expression turned serious. "Are you serious?" "Yes, let's get divorced. We have a month to cool off. Let's go make an appointment, and we can draft the divorce agreement during that time." I won't ask for much. Yale finally realized I wasn't bluffing. A cold light flashed in his narrow eyes. Are you sure you can let go? Was I reluctant to see him kissing someone else? Or was I reluctant to be humiliated by him again? I shook my head. Aren't you the one who can't let go? Yale's face immediately turned cold. He jumped up, sounding urgent. As agreed, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning. Don't go back on your word.
5.
Strangely, since I realized Yale was cheating, I couldn't sleep well at night. I often found myself staring at Yale as he slept, and I was starting to feel seriously depressed. But after we talked it out, and I moved into the guest room, I felt an incredible sense of relief and started sleeping better. Early in the morning, I woke up, put on a light makeup, and chose my favorite outfit. I didn't care if Yale thought it looked good or not. Today was a new beginning, and I was in a great mood. When Yale came out of the room, he was startled by my smile. His eyes scanned me with an unknown emotion, and there was a hint of surprise. Are you ready? Let's go. I took half a day off, so don't be too slow. My urging brought Yale back to his senses. Are you sure you've thought this through? Absolutely. I nodded, and Yale grinned. We drove to the Civil Affairs Bureau in silence. We arrived early, and the office was still closed. Yale checked his phone repeatedly and said impatiently, I have a meeting today. Let's come back another day. I stopped Yale. It's almost time. The staff is already here. A staff member opened the door, and Yale loosened his collar, his brow furrowed. I pushed him. Let's go, or we'll have to wait in line. Yale took a deep breath and grabbed my arm as I was about to stand up. Amelia, are you sure you've thought this through? If you regret it later, I can. You've already cheated, and you're still worried about whether I'll regret it? Haven't you been the one hesitating all along? I interrupted Yale. His face turned as black as ink, and he released me, standing up and walking forward in large strides. The registration process was quick. If both parties agreed, the divorce would be finalized in a month. I told Yale to go ahead, and I took a taxi to the company. He hesitated and leaned against the car door, looking at me. You have a month to reconsider. If you regret it, you can cancel it. No need. Why are you saying so much? What are you afraid of? Yale seemed to be struck by my words and retorted angrily, I'm afraid you'll take too much of my property. I told you I won't ask for anything. Have your lawyer draw up the agreement and show it to me. If it's reasonable, I'll sign it directly. I waved my hand, not wanting to get entangled with Yale any further.
6.
I found a new apartment and didn't move the belongings I'd left at Yale's place. Most of it was bought by him, and I didn't want to see it and get upset. So Yale called me several times asking me to move my stuff, but I just told him to throw it away. And then I had some peace and quiet. The company entered a busy period, and I was swamped with work. My subordinates and superiors were constantly coming to me with problems. I was so busy and tired that I didn't have the energy to think about my relationship with Yale anymore. Every night, I would fall asleep as soon as I got home, and I hadn't taken sleeping pills in days. It's true that when you're so busy, you don't even have time to be depressed. But I didn't expect Yale to come looking for me. Since our companies have some cooperation, they all knew about my relationship with Yale. When it was time to discuss a new project, I was assigned to it. No one believed that I was getting a divorce from Yale. When I arrived with my subordinate, the assistant stopped me. She seemed completely unaware of Yale's schedule and openly mocked me. MS. Amelia, you're divorced now. Why are you here looking for Mr. Yale? Are you regretting it? All the employees' eyes were on the confrontation between the assistant and me. No one came to mediate. On one hand, there was Yale's beloved mistress, and on the other hand, there was his legal wife who was in the process of getting a divorce. Neither side could be offended. My subordinate, a fresh graduate, was straightforward and retorted, We're here to discuss a cooperation on behalf of the company. Mr. Yale knows about this. Why are you stopping us? What cooperation? Aren't you just relying on Mr. Yale's position to climb so high in the company? Otherwise, how could you be here to discuss cooperation? The assistant couldn't keep her cool. At such a young age, she had already dug her own grave by showing off in front of so many people. I stopped my subordinate and asked her. The company requires a minimum of a bachelor's degree. As a junior college graduate, how did you manage to climb to the position of assistant in just 1 year? Your salary and benefits are better than some graduates from prestigious universities. Is that fair? When someone is questioned, the best way to respond is to counter-question. Sure enough, the assistant blushed. That's because I'm capable. Really? So you're saying that they're all inferior to you? You're capable, but why can't you even do the most basic job of assisting your boss? This is a proper company, and you're turning away representatives who come to discuss cooperation. Is this how an assistant should treat guests? The assistant's face turned visibly red, and the employees who didn't like her exchanged knowing glances. Yale came out of his office, and when he saw me, a flash of joy crossed his face. He didn't notice the assistant beside him. Come to the conference room. 7. No, we can't do that, I said, stopping my subordinate. Your little assistant doesn't want to give us a chance and wants to kick us out. That must be Mr. Yale's intention too, right? I raised an eyebrow at her. The assistant's face turned red, and she was about to cry. I don't know. All right, stop making a scene. Yale had made his stance clear, but I wasn't going to let it go. Is this how your company treats people? I asked, pointing at the assistant. She should apologize. The assistant's eyes were red and watery, and I felt a pang of pity. Yale softened and protected her, saying, she's new here and doesn't know any better. I'll teach her a lesson later. Let's forget about it this time. Forget about it? He really cared about this little assistant. In front of the entire company, and even though I was a representative of another company, he didn't give me any face. My subordinate, seeing the injustice, spoke up. Mr. Yale's company doesn't seem very sincere about this cooperation. We'll just forget about it. As soon as the words left her mouth, I was stunned. Young people are so impulsive. I'll have to clean up this mess. Yale looked at both of us with a dangerous glint in his eyes, and I waited for his reaction. After a tense 3 seconds, Yale pushed the assistant forward. Apologize. Hurry up. Yale was clearly unhappy, and his frown showed his displeasure. The assistant, still seeking help, reluctantly lowered her head. It wasn't as satisfying as I had imagined. Yale was just compromising for his own benefit. With just the 3 of us in the conference room, Yale sat down in his chair, looking very relaxed, his gaze fixed on my subordinate. What's your relationship with her? I'm a new employee at the company, and MS. Amelia is my mentor. The young man answered honestly. Yale turned his gaze back to me and said mockingly, You're doing well. You even have new employees. I turned cold.
Mr.
Yale, let's get down to business. He was interrupted, and his eyes darkened as he listened to my subordinate's presentation. He found fault with everything. He dismissed the cooperation plan that our entire team had worked on for 3 revisions. I put away the documents. I guess that's it then. Maybe we can cooperate again in the future. Before leaving, Yale stopped me. Come alone for lunch tomorrow at noon. I'll think about it. I knew he was doing it on purpose. The upturned corner of his mouth said it all. He was the best candidate for this project, and my superiors had repeatedly told me to make it happen. I had to consider the bigger picture. The assistant stood at the door, no longer looking aggrieved. She held her head high and said some polite words to send me off, her eyes filled with undisguised triumph. No wonder Yale had been checking his phone so frequently. He was getting his revenge.
8.
I drafted and redrafted countless messages to Yale, but nothing felt right. I needed to distance myself from this relationship. Work problems would be handled at work. I arrived at noon, exactly as planned. The assistant, who must have been warned in advance, didn't cause any trouble and reluctantly led me to Yale's office. He was on the phone, speaking in a British accent. He gestured for me to wait. For a moment, I was transported back to when I first met Yale. Back then, he was already busy starting his company. When I went to see him, he was in a new office building, his back to me, yelling into the phone in English. When he turned around and saw me, his eyes softened. Amelia. I'd remembered that seamless shift for years. Until Yale hung up the phone, I realized he was different from the man I remembered. Gold-rimmed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. Fine lines creased the corners of his eyes, giving him a mature, commanding presence. He picked up his coat. "Let's go eat." "The contract." "It's lunchtime. We can't have people saying I'm mistreating my business partners." He said it so seriously that I couldn't argue. Yale told his assistant, "If anyone looks for me before 3 p.m., tell them I'm busy." I felt another dangerous look land on me. Yale took me to a Sichuan restaurant. It was quite spicy. I could handle spicy food, but his stomach couldn't. Gradually, I had cut back on spicy food too. "I need to keep my guests happy," he said, noticing my question. The dishes he ordered were all my favorites. We sat opposite each other, the atmosphere awkward. I took out the contract, trying to break the ice. He suddenly asked, "How have you been?" "I've been fine." He seemed a bit self-deprecating. "Are you really that well off without me?" I hesitated, then nodded.
Yes.
"What's with these pills?" They were small bottles, clearly for insomnia and depression. "I found them when I was packing." "When did you start taking them?" He blinked, trying to find an answer from me. I shook the bottle, and the pills clinked against the glass, the sound quickly lost in the noise of the restaurant. "Since you started cheating."
9.
Yale may have thought he was hiding it well. At first, his cheating was cautious. But a woman's intuition is always heightened when it comes to someone she cares about. One weekend a year ago, I went to his company to keep him company. He took me to order afternoon tea and casually said, "One with 3/4 sugar, no nuts." That wasn't my usual order. There were no important clients visiting the company. Out of 100 or so people in the entire company, no one would need him to remember their tea preferences, but he did, and it was so natural, as if he ordered it often. But Yale, he didn't like drinking milk tea. In the past, when he ran errands for me, he would only remember 3/4 ice, full sugar. It was at that moment that my alarm bells went off. Someone had taken my place. I didn't say anything. Yale was busy paying, and he didn't notice my changed expression. Later, that special order of milk tea went to the young assistant. She was a new employee who had only been with the company for 2 months. She wasn't very pretty, but her youth made her look innocent. Once a relationship has a crack, it becomes uncontrollable. I could accurately detect something was wrong with Yale's every move. I knew when he worked overtime and went to the movies with the young assistant, and I also knew when he worked overtime and went to a hotel with the young assistant. I didn't have the courage to question Yale, nor did I have the courage to see the evidence that would hurt me. When people are deeply in love, they often lose themselves. I kept telling myself that Yale still loved me. Men in his position, playing around with women was normal, but he would always come back to the family. But late at night, I would often think of the times when Yale only loved me. He knew I was allergic to pineapple and gave up his favorite pineapple juice for me. He said, "It's okay, apple juice is sour too." When he was chasing me, he found out that someone was following me, so he followed me home every day for 2 months, completely dispelling the idea that I was living alone. He said that it was a hooligan act to date for a long time without getting married, and he planned a grand proposal in the first year. Yale swore to me that he would only fall for me in this life. So how could I share his love with others? Yale's love for me went from a passionate full score to a gradual decline, while mine had risen to the limit bit by bit. In an unequal relationship, I lost completely, but was unwilling to admit it. I even tried to commit suicide by cutting my wrists, but my subordinate found me and saved me. I told her to keep it a secret, and the company thought I was under too much pressure and gave me a week off. During that time, Yale, under the pretext of a business trip, went out to play with the young assistant. He never knew that while he was having an affair with someone else, I almost died at home.
10.
As I said those words, I felt nothing. After that dark period of torment, my brain had simply blocked it out. I didn't know what expression was on Yale's face. He poured me another drink. "I didn't know any of this. You never told me. No wonder you were so good to me during that time." The only solution I could think of was to win back Yale's exclusive love. No matter how busy I was at work, I would go home and cook for him. I remembered every casual remark he made and almost became his maid. Even my colleagues laughed at me, saying I wasn't as good to my boss as I was to him. But nothing worked. Perhaps it was the law of diminishing returns. Knowing how good I was to him, Yale thought I couldn't live without him and became even more brazen, going out more and more frequently. He probably guessed that I knew he was cheating, but so what? He had nothing to lose. My pleas for his attention had only emboldened him. The food arrived, very spicy. Yale didn't eat much, and neither could I. I had given up spicy food for so long that my taste buds had changed. Yale sighed, his voice trembling slightly from the spice. "Amelia, let's get back together. I'll make it up to you. I can't accept your little assistant. Will you break up with her? If you do, I won't divorce you." Yale didn't answer directly. He kept drinking, and the steaming hot pot filled the air with mist. I couldn't see his expression clearly. It was ridiculous. Even in this situation, I was trying to force him to break up with his assistant by threatening divorce. I was just unwilling to accept that Yale, who had said he loved me for 8 years, could be so easily replaced by a girl he'd known for only 2 months. Even without love, I wanted to fight for him. He had said he didn't want a divorce, that he wanted to get back together. He knew I had tried to kill myself because of him. Wouldn't he feel guilty? He hadn't seemed to care about his assistant that much at the company. Maybe I could win this time? I waited a long time, but Yale didn't say anything else. But his silence was even more painful. His favoritism was still given to someone else. The girl who could make him rush to the hospital in the middle of the night because of her period had won. We didn't eat much of the meal. Yale reached out to me. "Give me the contract." He signed without even looking at it. "No changes?" "No, it's fine." Happy cooperation. The deal that had been so difficult to close was suddenly finalized because of the young assistant. 11. I was pretty shaken by the whole thing. I delegated the follow-up work to my subordinate and cut off all contact with Yale. 10 days left until the divorce. A week later, it was my birthday, and the department decided to have a party to celebrate the successful cooperation. A 3-tier cake was brought in. On top, it read, "Happy birthday, Amelia." My head spun. It was Yale's doing. Immediately afterward, he walked in, looking sharp in a suit. The employees, as if it had been planned, cheered and then left collectively. I arranged for them to have another gathering. You're their leader, and they feel more relaxed without you around. My slightly improved mood was ruined, and he had to do this on my birthday. Yale lit the candles. "Make a wish." I didn't move. "What do you want?" "Make a wish first." We stood there in a stalemate, and his expression gradually became uncomfortable. "I've broken up with my assistant. So, we celebrate our birthdays together every year. Make a wish first." The wax was dripping onto the cake. I stared at the flickering flame and said calmly, "Last year, you spent it with her." The first time Yale celebrated my birthday, he also brought a big cake and asked me to make a wish. After that, tacitly, no matter how busy we were, we would always make time to celebrate our birthdays together. But last year, the assistant couldn't handle the complicated document handover, so Yale went and never came back. I waited until the ice cream on the cake melted and had to throw it away. His expression became even more uncomfortable, and he repeated, "I've broken up with her." "So what?" I repeated myself. The atmosphere in the room was tense. So, what if he had broken up with her? I knew he still cared about her. No matter what the reason, I didn't care about them anymore. The candle had burned halfway down, and Yale's patience was wearing thin. He blew out the candle himself. "Amelia, what do you want? It's been almost a month. Isn't this enough drama? Didn't you say you wouldn't divorce me if you broke up with her? I've done it. I won't contact her again." Oh, he thought I was throwing a tantrum by asking for a divorce. He thought he could just coax me back with a cake. I looked at him with a sad expression. "Yale, I don't love you anymore, okay? This divorce is happening."
12.
"You're playing with me?" Yale's expression turned ugly. "You think we can just get back together because you say you've broken up with her? But you hesitated back then. If you love her so much, wouldn't a divorce be perfect for both of you?"
Hiss.
Yale let out a dangerous growl. "Amelia, do you have a heart? We haven't been in touch for so long, and I specifically came to your company to discuss a cooperation, and then I brought you a cake, and this is how you treat me? What? You're acting like you're my savior? I gave you a year, and when did you ever seize the opportunity? My anger was rising. How dare he blame me? When I went to your company, how your little assistant treated me, you know very well. If it weren't for your indulgence, how dare a mere employee do that? You said you were tired of me, bored with me, and now you're acting all high and mighty? Yale, are you sick in the head? He was pushed back by me and was stunned. He emphasized, I really have broken up with her.
Fine.
You broke up. So what? I was trembling with anger. It was as if he couldn't understand human language, and he just kept telling me that he and his assistant were over. All the emotions I had suppressed suddenly erupted. Just because you broke up doesn't mean you two weren't together. Just because you broke up doesn't mean you didn't cheat. Do you want me to give you an award? To celebrate Mr. Lou breaking up with his little lover? What's the difference between that and a murderer saying they've reformed? Yale was dumbfounded by my outburst. He held the cake cart tightly and looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. His glasses reflected a cold light. Can you calm down? I know you still have feelings for me. You're just angry. Fuck you. I don't love you anymore. I'm just angry at how shameless you are. My ex-boyfriend wasn't as disgusting as you, dumping me and then coming back to make up. Am I so pathetic? I've given everything up for you and your lover, and you still want to make me angry? Yale fell silent. We were like two trapped beasts, glaring at each other, neither willing to yield. He broke the silence. Amelia, you're not young anymore. You should think about your future. With you, I don't have to worry about anything. The job market is tough now. If you lose your job in a few years,
What?
is being with you better than being unemployed? You can kick me out anytime, but at least I have a job. If I had agreed to stay in your company, I would have been jobless and alone by now. I spat at Yale, feeling that if I continued this conversation, I would have a relapse. Before leaving, I threw the candle on the cake at his face. I told you before, I'm 1 year older on my ID. I'm 29. Why did you put 30? Even if I'm not young, I'm still in my 20s. I'm better than a 32-year-old old man. And your figure is terrible too. Don't you know you've gained 20 pounds? You're about to have a beer belly. Yale was shaking with anger, but who cares? It was his problem. 13. The day before the divorce, I met with Yale again. The reason was simple. After being dumped, the assistant, out of resentment, tampered with the cooperation details between the two companies, causing irreversible damage. The only person to blame for this was Yale, who had spoiled her so much that he even let her participate in the contract. As the person in charge at that time, I went to their company. The assistant was causing a scene, smashing things to vent her anger. When she saw me, she became even more furious and lunged at me. Yale stepped in between us and pushed her hard. The assistant fell into the pile of broken things, her face contorted. You pushed me. You actually pushed me for her. Yale, didn't you say you had no feelings for her? You said we could get a divorce anytime. Why are you so reluctant now that we're divorced? And you're still haunting me even after the divorce. If it weren't for your interference, President Yale would never have abandoned me. She was like a madwoman, nothing like the cute girl she used to be. It seems that everyone looks the same when they don't get what they want. The security guards came over. Without Yale's favor, they were no longer gentle and roughly dragged the assistant away. The assistant tried to grab Yale, but Yale remained cold and moved closer to me. Are you willing to treat her like that? The assistant heard this, but got no answer. Sometimes, a silent answer hurts more than a spoken one. I guess that Yale couldn't let her go. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let her stay after saying they were over, and he wouldn't have let her get away with such a big mistake. If she had been patient, she might have succeeded. I went to the meeting room with him, and he agreed readily. I'll pay for all the losses. I gave him a new compensation contract. If there are no problems, sign here. Suddenly, he looked up at me. Have you thought it through? Now, it's your turn to think. I said we're getting a divorce, he paused. She's gone now, so you can rest assured. Yale, don't you understand? We're getting a divorce, not because of her. Yale's hand holding the pen stiffened. I was afraid he would tear up the contract. But I've only been with her. Yale's voice was barely audible. But you've given your love to someone else. It's no longer pure. It wasn't just her. There could have been others. Yale, I'm disappointed that you cheated, not because you cheated with her. He was silent again and signed the document, his hand trembling. 14. At the Civil Affairs Bureau, Yale didn't want to go inside. Let's come back another day, he said. Today's not a good day. I laughed at him.
What?
When did you become so superstitious? Yale took a deep breath. I'm the boss. I have to believe in these things. Just don't go today. Let's talk about it later. I don't think so. I stared at Yale's evasive eyes. His brows furrowed inch by inch, and he tapped the ground impatiently with the toe of his shoe, locked in a stalemate with me. Amelia, do you have to do this?
Yes.
Yale kicked the step again, frustrated. He turned around, crossed his arms, and turned back, his eyes bloodshot. Are you trying to kill me? I looked at him, a little confused. Yale scratched his head and sat down on the step, his head down, thinking. When he looked up again, his tone had changed. Please don't get a divorce. He had never looked so down before. The man who would look me in the eye and say, I cheated, so what, was now begging me like this. Think about it. We don't have to get divorced. I know I was wrong. Give me another chance, okay? I didn't speak. He continued. You know me. I'm just stubborn. I wanted to make up with you, but I was being stubborn and couldn't let go of my pride. I thought if I gave you a chance, you would come back to me. That's not a chance. It's a handout. No, that's not what I meant. I thought I didn't like you anymore, but when you said you wanted a divorce, I panicked. I didn't want a divorce at all. I thought you were just saying it out of anger. You love me. You can't live without me, and you'd get over it. If I hadn't been so stubborn that day, would you have forgiven me? Plea filled Yale's eyes, and I looked at him calmly, but didn't reply. Isn't this what he liked to do? I was just learning from him. After a while, he tried to hold my hand, but I dodged it as if I'd been electrocuted. 15. Yale looked hurt. I don't know if it's any use saying this now, but I really haven't been able to let you go. I've been waiting for your message every day. I thought that one day you'd get over it and we could get back together. I really think about you every day. I originally wanted to use the excuse of getting something from you to come back, but you wouldn't let me, so I packed up all your stuff. I found those pills and I really regretted it. I shouldn't have ignored you like that. I always thought you loved me so much that I could just get away with anything and that you'd always be by my side. I never thought you would leave. Yale started crying as he spoke, his words becoming illogical. More and more people were coming to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get divorced, and seeing Yale crying so sadly, they asked why he was getting a divorce. He cheated. Oh, what a jerk. My husband is the same. The random conversation made Yale cry even harder. I felt awkward. Crying like this in public was embarrassing. Can you cry after we finish the paperwork? If we don't get divorced, Amelia, can we get back together? I won't be stubborn anymore, and I won't look for other girls. Just forgive me, okay? The tall man leaned in and smeared his tears all over me. I was startled. Are you out of your mind? I don't care about my image anymore. I just want to get you back. I've been so wrong. I always thought I was the boss, that I could be arrogant. Amelia, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I lied. I don't want a divorce at all. I just want to be with you. I'm sorry, forgive me. I always mess things up when I try to make things up to you. I originally wanted to use that cooperation as an excuse to see you more. When your subordinate spoke up for you, I was so jealous. Who is he? How dare he be with you? I sat there from morning to afternoon, listening to Yale say everything he wanted to say. He had probably cried too much. His eyes were red and swollen, and he was still sobbing uncontrollably. I felt a little smug. He was so pathetic. But when I thought about this relationship, neither of us had won. It was a bitter taste. Let's go. The Civil Affairs Bureau is about to close. I jumped off the step, and Yale was still standing there, dazed. Why won't you give me another chance? Because you're so panicked. It's just that you're used to having me around, isn't it? I've seen the way you look at me, so I know you really do like that assistant. You just can't accept me leaving because we've been together for so long. It's your possessiveness. Even if you don't love me anymore, you don't want me to leave. Yale, stop torturing yourself. When feelings are gone, they're gone. I understand why you suddenly don't love me anymore, and you should understand why I'm so determined to get a divorce. Yale's face was a mixture of sweat and tears. He looked up and smiled bitterly. Was I crazy just now?
To ruin my image like that.
Fine, let's get a divorce. Who cares? Finally, he moved. We finished the divorce proceedings quickly. Yale didn't say anything else. When we left, he didn't say goodbye either. He just walked away with a sullen expression. But his car stayed parked there, not moving. Later, I received a large sum of money. Compensation for you. Don't regret it later. It was a childish thing to say, but he was probably still holding a grudge. I avoided the project as much as possible. I heard that after the compensation, Yale's company started laying off employees. Oh, well, I never expected to rely on him for a living.